This evening, we're really grateful to have John Adams with us again. John was at the online summit and spoke to us recently about the kind of the longer history of the campaign. And since there's obviously been the ruling, and we're going to hear this evening a little bit on the update on that. So thank you very much, John, for joining us again this evening. You've all been sharing in the comments section where you're joining in from around the world, and we know that there's been support from peoples all around the world with this campaign. And I just, even glancing at now, I can see there's people who are joining in from all around the world. So people here this evening will have kind of varying familiarity with Stonehenge and with the history of this campaign. So we'd like to just start this evening with sharing a video with some photos that show Stonehenge within its sacred landscape, and that also includes some photos from the Stonehenge Alliance campaign. And we then would like to open the evening in ceremony in the way that we often do, with an opening call to spirit before we pass over to John to hear updates. So if you'll just join us in watching this video, and shortly after with the opening of the evening. Now those photos, they remind us what this is about, what this monument and sacred landscape is about. I'd just like you to join me as we call to spirit, as we call from our hearts to that sacred landscape, to the monument, to the stones, and to the wider sacred landscape, the soil, all those ancient avenues, those earthworks and those henges, the earth beneath them, that soil, that chalk, the ancient springs of spring of Blickmead, and to all of the ancient sites that are connected to it, that were part of that wider ritual landscape. As we have this space here this evening that's called to and honour those ancestors, all the people who have that connection to that magical landscape of Stonehenge, those who originally worked the earth there, those who journeyed there to bring cremation remains and funeral remains, those who moved the stones and erected the stones into that monument that we know today, those who travelled the length and breadth of the country to be there to mark the turning of the wheel, the changing of the seasons, and celebrating the rebirth of the sun. And for all those many generations afterwards for whom that landscape has had a meaning, those who have travelled far and wide from right across the continent, those who have been laid to rest there in one of the many burial mounds that encircle the monument and that sacred landscape, we call to you. All the people today, present day, who feel a connection or a call to that sacred landscape, to the many thousands who gathered there on this very day to honour the spring equinox, to all those who gather at different times of the year to mark the cycles of the seasons, who are inspired by it, who are filled by wonder and awe by this landscape. And to all of the other than human beings who today still are called to this landscape, who live there, who make it their home, to that wildlife who have chosen this place to be their home or their breeding ground, or to return to it year after year, we call to you and honour you all. And to the future generations, for all those for whom we hope to preserve this sacred landscape, so that you may, like us, have a place to gather and dream anew, and to feel the wonder and awe and inspiration of this place, to honour the cycles of the seasons and the wonder of our place within all that is. And so as we call to that sacred landscape, to the stones that we know, to the earthworks that we know, to the wider plains, we call to all of the unseen beings and the energies that are part of that magic, the part of the magic and mystery of that place. We call to you for gratitude for everything that you have shared, and we ask that you weave your strength and your magic in all of our efforts to protect this sacred landscape. So with all of the ancestors, all those who of those who've gone before, all those who are here today, and for all the future generations of the human and the other than human, for the seen and unseen, we call to you and welcome you to join us in this space. Blessed be. Oh, thank you very much, everybody who's joined in with the opening there. I'm just going to spotlight myself and John. I can just see, there we go. Fantastic. Wonderful. Welcome, John. Thank you so much for joining us this evening again to speak to us about the updates and where things are with the campaign. You spoke on the online summit and kind of gave a really detailed talk about the history, and I'm going to kind of try and just sum up a little bit to bring some people up to speed. And we've shared the video of that onto the page recently. But Stonehenge, the thousands of years that it's been there, this is just a short time in its history, but it's been a short few decades that have been, really threatening the integrity of the site overall. We're talking about the wider sacred landscape of Stonehenge, which for the last few decades, um, the governments of different kind of periods have proposed to to widen the road through there, putting a tunnel that goes underneath the World Heritage Site, but that wider landscape of Stonehenge. And while this was originally being proposed within the 90s, that plan was withdrawn and then it was thought about again. But it's really been in the last decade where there's been new energy by the current government to plough new roads through the landscapes of this country, that there's been a new energy to uh, uh, for this scheme for the tunnel. And Stonehenge Alliance have been the main driving force in the campaigns to protect this sacred landscape and to call for there to be no kind of expansion and damage to the World Heritage Site there caused by this road and this tunnel. Stonehenge Alliance kind of led the with Stonehenge Save Stonehenge World Heritage Site, took the government to court in 2021 to challenge the scheme, and the High Courts there ruled that the scheme as it was at that point was unlawful. Unfortunately, in the way things are with the government, as they essentially reshuffled the papers and put the plans in again, and Save Stonehenge World Heritage Site and Stonehenge Alliance have been again working extremely hard to challenge this. The most recent hearing in the High Court took place in December, and we learnt, I think, John, was it early February, the
Yeah.
ruling on that one. that challenge had been unsuccessful. And John told us in the talk that he gave for the online summit the clear message of we're not giving up, and they haven't been giving up. They've been continuing working, and some people have seen the calls for fundraising for the appeal, and uh, John is this evening going to update us on where things are at with this campaign, and bring us all up to speed on where things are. So thank you, John.
Okay. Okay, Jonathan. Well, greetings, everyone. I'm speaking this evening from West Wiltshire, about 20 miles from Stonehenge, where I live. And I used to live in a village very close to Stonehenge, a village called Chitton, which is right on the edge of Salisbury Plain. But happy spring equinox, everyone. I can see from the chat that some of you were at Stonehenge this morning. Nicely put, Jonathan, if I may say so. You summarised that very nicely. Just to draw out, you referred several times to the wider landscape, and I can't stress the importance of that, because everyone recognises and values and holds dear the monument itself, the stones, for many reasons, and perhaps for some obvious reasons. Not everyone understands that the wider landscape is fundamentally part of Stonehenge. The World Heritage Site is 6,500 acres. That's about 10 square miles. So it's a big tract of land. And even now, we don't fully understand its topography or its features, or what some of those features were for, what purpose they served. And there's a lot more work to be done in future years to really understand. But clearly, the ancient people had a feeling for that piece of land, for that landscape, and for the various monuments that it built. And as Jonathan said, the hundreds of burial mounds, which is largely lost on us today. And that's a tragedy in many ways. And it's so crucial that we try to protect it for future generations who may once again have the vision to see what that landscape really means to humanity. But just to briefly rewind, and I'm conscious that many people, some people online will know quite a lot about this, others may not know so much. I won't describe this road scheme again in any detail, other than just a couple of features, because as shocking as they are, you need to keep them in your mind. Some people say, well, what's wrong with a tunnel? A tunnel is quite a good idea because it's going to be a deep tunnel, which it will be, well away from archaeology. The problem is that the tunnel that's proposed is 3.3 kilometres long, and the World Heritage Site at that point is 5.4 kilometres wide. So you can see we've immediately got a problem in that the tunnel's too short. Somebody said, I think it was in Private Eye last week, that somebody said this would be like the Channel Tunnel coming up 3 miles before the French coast, which is a good comparison. So what that means is that either end of the tunnel, there's going to be a long, deep cutting, dual carriageway cutting, leading away from and down to the tunnel, if you will, the portals. And those cuttings are a huge problem to us because they will inflict damage on the World Heritage Site. Now, just briefly to rewind, the Planning Inspectorate, which is a government agency, they carried out an examination of this road scheme, and some of you may have attended some of those hearings. And the examining authority was made up of 5 highly experienced professional planning inspectors, and their task was to look at everything that was being proposed and to make recommendations to the Transport Secretary on this particular road scheme. Now, the examination took 6 months. The inspectors listened to detailed evidence from stakeholders, specialists, residents, NGOs, and members of the public, and they questioned National Highways. At the time, they were known as Highways England, but they're now called National Highways. National Highways is the government agency that builds and maintains roads for the government. But the planning inspectorate questioned National Highways on lots of issues, and the examining authority's recommendation was submitted to the Transport Secretary in January 2020. And regarding the cutting, which I was just describing at the western end, the examining authority said this. They said the cutting would introduce a greater physical change to the Stonehenge landscape than has occurred in its 6,000 years as a place of widely acknowledged human significance. Moreover, the change would be permanent and irreversible. Now, these are pretty hard-headed planners. You know, they're planning inspectors. They understand planning law, and they're talking there in almost emotional terms, it seems to me. The examiners also said that Neolithic and Bronze Age ceremonial and other monuments would suffer major harm through the excavation of a deep, wide slot in its midst. The presence would represent a fundamental physical change of a scale not previously experienced. And going on, in the examining authority's view, the benefits would not outweigh the harm arising from those engineering works of a scale and nature not previously experienced in this landscape without parallel. All these words are their words. The examining authority concluded then that the effects of the proposed development on the World Heritage Site and the historic environment as a whole would be significantly adverse. Irreversible harm would occur, affecting the criteria for which Stonehenge was inscribed on the World Heritage List, and the authority, the examining authority, recommended that the Secretary of State should withhold consent. They recommended that this road should not go ahead. That was pretty unusual. This is a quite conservative, with a small c, cautious diplomatic organization. They're not known for bold decisions. But nevertheless, just 10 months later, the Secretary of State, the minister at the time, who was Grant Shapps, who is now, you'll know, the Defence Secretary, he ignored that recommendation and approved the development consent order, which is known as a DCO for short. And I mean, I have to say, what is the point of having a planning examination if you're simply going to ignore its advice? So as many of you will know, and as Jonathan summarised, we successfully challenged the decision in the High Court in July 2021, and the DCO was quashed. When I say we, that's a small group of supporters of the Stonehenge Alliance, I'm one of them, who formed a company to bring these legal challenges. So just 3 of us. And the reason for doing that is you protect yourself against the possibility of horrendous costs if you lose the case. So 4 months later, the Secretary of State, Grant Shapps, announced that he would redetermine the scheme, and he invited National Highways to make further representations, as they put it, along with others. And of course, the Stonehenge Alliance submitted several papers, long papers, some of them 25, 30, 40 pages long, some of them highly technical, which people prepared for us. There were lots of these papers, there were lots of representations made. But then just 20 months, the redetermination process ran for 20 months. And then the new Secretary of State, somebody called Mark Harper, issued another DCO for essentially the same road scheme. Well, of course, we initiated legal proceedings. This is a second High Court claim, challenging the lawfulness of that decision. And that's where we met many of you outside the High Court, and we're enormously grateful and humbled by the support that we received. It was a colourful, joyful occasion, much more joyful outside than it was in, I have to say. So a judicial review, which is what the case was, is, and this is important to understand really, is only reviewing the lawfulness of the government's decision to grant development consent to the road scheme. In other words, a judicial review is concerned with process. It's not judging the merits or otherwise of the road scheme itself. Now, very briefly, because this does relate to the subsequent appeal, the grounds of our High Court challenge were ground one, and I'll go through this very quickly and briefly. The Secretary of State, we said, failed to reopen the examination. As you heard, for the first consent, there was a public examination, took 6 months, 5 independent planning inspectors. I'm not exaggerating, thousands of documents, dozens and dozens of witnesses. There was nothing like that on the second occasion. For the first examination, the examiners, they tabled questions to Highways England, sorry, at the time. They tabled the questions. Those questions ran to 350 pages. There was nothing like that with this second decision. There was no way to challenge the assertions that National Highways were making about their further research into a longer tunnel and the road systems. So that was ground one. Ground two was firstly when assessing what's called the F010 route, which is a southern bypass of the World Heritage Site, which would avoid the World Heritage Site completely, probably costs £450 million less than the tunnel. When assessing that route as an alternative to the DCO scheme, we said that the Secretary of State failed to have regard to certain, what they lawyers call obviously material considerations. And secondly, he failed to have regard to a non-expressway option. I mean, one thing that comes to mind is some serious investment in public transport. Ground three was in the Secretary of State ascribed no weight to the risk of Stonehenge being delisted as a World Heritage Site. And we said that the Secretary of State therefore acted irrationally. The people that would delist it would be UNESCO. And the Secretary of State in his decision letter pretty much just brushed UNESCO aside. Ground four, we said that the Secretary of State adopted an unlawful approach to the World Heritage Convention. The World Heritage Convention is an international treaty which is meant to protect World Heritage Sites, and the UK government is a signatory to that convention. And we said that by ignoring that, the Secretary of State was unlawful. Ground seven, we said that the Secretary of State's approach to environmental impact assessment was unlawful in relation to cumulative greenhouse gas emissions, because this section of road, this single carriageway that crosses the World Heritage Site, is just one of 7 single carriageway sections on the A303 going down towards Taunton, going west. And unless all those 7 sections of single carriageway are made into dual carriageway, if that's the decision, then all that's going to happen is that the traffic will, if the tunnel's built, speed through the World Heritage Site. People won't be able to see the stones, and it will 2.5 miles down the road, it will come to the next single carriageway section and or become, bottlenecked and congested again. Ground 8, we said that the minister making the decision could not possibly have taken note of all of the facts, all of the submissions. As I think I said, there were around 2,000 documents as part of the redetermination process. And yet the minister was given, I believe, a 2-page briefing from his officials. And he was given, wait for it, chaps, he was given a hyperlink to the document library. Well, if you started to look through that document library tonight, I promise it would take a month to read all of the documents. There are so many long, technical, difficult documents, and yet the minister was simply given a link to that, and we said that that was not adequate. Anyway, as Jonathan said, the judge's decision was handed down on the 19th of February, and unfortunately he dismissed all of our grounds, saying permission for judicial review was refused. So since then, our lawyers on the 28th of February applied for permission to appeal his judgment, that judgment. Now, the court will only grant this permission if they think that the appeal has a real chance of succeeding. You can't appeal against the lower court's decision, i.e. the High Court, just because you think the judge got it wrong, even if that is what you think. You can only appeal if you have proper legal grounds. For example, if you can show that the decision was wrong because of a serious mistake or because the procedure was not followed properly. So that application, which is asking the appeal court, was asking for permission to go to the appeal court, that's with the courts, and we're awaiting the outcome of that. Now, just to put the legal challenge and the appeal and the process on one side, alongside this, the Stonehenge Alliance has been actively lobbying UNESCO to add Stonehenge to the list of World Heritage Sites in danger. This is a formal list that they have, and it's the first step to delisting the World Heritage Site. And the UNESCO's World Heritage Committee has threatened to do this on a number of occasions. But I'm afraid to say that the World Heritage Committee is highly politicized. Decisions are taken between members in advance of meetings, probably, and at ambassadorial and diplomatic level, government level, in other words. There's a lot of lobbying. The government's got all the resources that it needs. But nevertheless, we are in close touch with UNESCO, trying to urge them to add Stonehenge to the World Heritage Site list sites that are in danger. There have only ever been 3 World Heritage Sites across the entire world that have been delisted. One of those was quite recently, the most recent was in Liverpool. So how humiliating for this country, for this government, or perhaps they don't feel the humiliation, but how humiliating that we stand a risk of losing 2 World Heritage Sites. What does it say about the value we place on our culture and our heritage? But we've also discovered quite recently that the UK government has asked UNESCO not to publish its updated, what they call State of Conservation report on Stonehenge World Heritage Site. And it's also, the government's also not given consent for what's described as a comprehensive information package on the proposed modifications to the A303 road scheme, conforming to the request by the committee. By the committee, they mean the World Heritage Committee. The committee asked for these reports last September, and they wanted them by February, which they delivered, but that's when they said, we only want a summary published. It's just over a page long and really says nothing. Now, we believe that the contents of these reports could be potentially embarrassing for the UK government, which is why it doesn't want them made public. And finally, for this section of the our time together, I'm afraid to say that National Highways are already underway with preliminary planning. They recently applied to Wiltshire Council to carry out preliminary engineering works on a national nature reserve. The two things don't go together, do they? Engineering works on a national nature reserve. It's called Parsonage Down, and it's just outside the World Heritage Site, near the village of Winterbourne Stoke. And we've learned that that's going to be the site for what they describe as a scrape to form an alternative nesting site for stone curlew. And I think, Jonathan, you've got a photograph there, because I'm betting that not many people online will have ever seen a stone curlew. And because of the, thanks very much, because of the work, the construction, the stone curlew, which breeds within the World Heritage Site and on the edge of the World Heritage Site, it breeds in very, very few places. There might be as few as 300 breeding pairs across the whole of the UK, but it will be disturbed due to the noise, light pollution, and dust from construction. The tunnelling is going to go on 24/7. The stone curlew, and just briefly, you know, because I find this interesting, the stone curlew is a strange, rare summer visitor to southern England, and is a crow-sized bird with a large head, yellow legs, and it's got relatively long wings and a tail, and it's active at night. Its large yellow eyes enable it to locate food when it's dark, and it's listed under Schedule 1 of the Wildlife and Countryside Act, meaning it's an offence to deliberately or recklessly disturb this species. Now, Parsonage Down, this National Nature Reserve, is also part of it is also a site of special scientific interest, and it's a designated special area of conservation. It thus has the highest level of legal protection. And we believe that the engineering works in this application, this is the planning application to Wiltshire Council, would cause very significant harm to the natural environment and habitats of protected species, and it will compromise the archaeological setting and landscape of the Stonehenge World Heritage Site. And we've objected to that planning application in robust terms. Interestingly enough, very little information was put up on the Wiltshire planning website. They said that was to protect the stone curlew, which seems rather ironic given what's being proposed. And we've formally complained to Wiltshire Council about that. But I have to tell you that the RSPB and Natural England both support this proposal. And it just begs the question, why would they do that? Why would a national charity whose reason for existence is to protect bird species and to ensure that numbers thrive and increase, why would they support this application? National Highways are also, they've held meetings locally because they're going to close the A360, which is a major road that links Salisbury to the Stonehenge World Heritage Site. So it's a main road in and out of Salisbury leading up to Stonehenge. And they're going to close that for 4 months so that they can run their massive power cables up to Stonehenge to power the tunnelling machines. They're also running a number of, National Highways are running a number of community events locally to inform people about their plans. But whatever their current plans are, if they ever start this road, they estimate it will take 5 years. I say it will not, it will certainly take 7 and could take more. They're saying it's about £2.5 billion. We're saying it's much more likely to be 3.5 billion. So a huge amount of money. Now, I'm sorry that that's a rather depressing story, depressing tale on the spring equinox, but these are the forces that we're up against. English Heritage support this road scheme. Well, why wouldn't they? They get nearly 1.5 million visitors to Stonehenge. And currently, if you want to pay to go in, it will cost you 26 quid. Multiply that by 1.5 million. National Trust support this road scheme, but then they've received enormous grants from National Highways to buy or to revert land that they own at Stonehenge back to grassland. They're going to reverse this where it's been ploughed, put it back to grassland. The RSPB support it, Natural England support it. So we really are up against dark forces, if you like. And I described elsewhere, and I may have said it last time, this is David and Goliath stuff. The Stonehenge Alliance is a tiny, tiny organization. We're just a handful, truly a handful of mainly retired people, and we're doing what we can. We've probably kept them off that World Heritage Site for probably an additional 4 years, maybe longer, through these legal challenges. But we are, the appeal is the only thing really now keeping the earth movers, the bulldozers, the heavy plant equipment off of that landscape. Jonathan, thank you.
Oh gosh, John, thanks very much for giving us the update. But gosh, as you explain it, we really do see the kind of the size and the scale of this as it is at the moment. And right back from going through the wording and the message from the inspectors, but also right up to where we are now with what's happening with the appeal. Um, Firstly, massive gratitude to you and everybody at Stonehenge Alliance for everything you're doing with this here, and for updating us there. We're going to just open this up for a bit of questions now, from people. Just if anybody's got any questions, please let us know in the comments section, because this is a chance where we can, if we've got any questions or kind of things that we're unclear about, we'll be looking specifically in a little while about different ways that we can help and support. But if there's any questions that people have got, we're going to just grab those from the chat there. So do write them in the chat section. If I may bring Krista in that case. Krista, are we going to gallery view now? I think we said we would do. Is that right? You're just on mute. Sorry, Krista. Let me just...
If people could switch their videos on, then we can see you. At the moment, we have a lot of, I think we have 23 people without their videos on. So then we can see you, which would be great. Just if you have any questions, it would be nice to see you, basically. There was one question in the chat, which I'm going to ask until more questions come in. Louise asked, which was the other charity besides of the RSBP, John? You remember? You said
well, there's an organisation called Natural England, and they're actually a government agency. I don't think technically they're a charity, but they're a government agency.
Okay, National England.
Natural England, and if you Google them, you go through, any government department, you go through to .gov.uk or whatever it is, and their details come up under .gov.uk. So they're a government agency who, to put it bluntly, probably do what the government tell them to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There's another question from Kath. Is any other action possible if this latest appeal fails, or would that be it?
I think there is the possibility of, subject to legal advice, of going to the Supreme Court. Now, if we failed at the High Court and failed at the Appeal Court, you'd have to have a very good reason, as it were, a good rationale, I suppose, for going to the Supreme Court. And of course, that unfortunately cost more money, would cost more money. But you see, our objective, to state perhaps the obvious, but the Stonehenge Alliance objective is really simple, and that is to stop that road, to stop any further development within the World Heritage Site. But our, if you like, to put it in rather managerial terms, our sub-objective is to delay it for as long as possible. Because the longer we delay it, the more it's going to cost and the less attractive it's going to be. And also, we'll have a change of government. We are in touch with Labour, and if they win the next election, we hope that we will certainly lobby them to see if they will postpone the scheme. They're certainly going to be looking for money to implement, some of the things that they want to do. So, yeah, our first objective is to stop it. So there are other actions. I mean, individuals can take, and we'll come on to some of those in a moment. You'll find lots of stuff on our website about writing to your MPs, about writing to ministers. There are sample letters there that you can use. I mean, anything like that is valuable. We're just updating our leaflet. We should have it really any day now. And wherever you are in the world, if you want copies of that leaflet, if you can let us know, you'll find our email on the Stonehenge Alliance website. Just use that email and tell us how many leaflets you want and where you want them posted, and we'll send you leaflets because it will help to raise awareness of what's going on.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan has just put the website of Stonehenge Alliance into the chat. As you said, John, you have delayed it, and it reminds me a bit of the HS2 actions who delayed and delayed and delayed, and that is, of course, one outcome, but on the long run, it's not enough, is it? We don't want that road to be built.
No, we don't. I mean, and that's why I described it rather badly as a sub-objective, to delay it. But I mean, the delaying, I think, has had value in itself, as well as the fact that it means that the road's not been started. Yeah, so no, we want to stop it altogether. That's what we want to stop.
But the delaying makes a huge difference, doesn't it?
Well, the costs are going up because, I mean, particularly over the last, during COVID and post-COVID, construction costs rose enormously.
Oh, yeah.
Ironically, National Highways produced some new figures where they said the costs had gone down. Can you believe? I mean, no, I don't.
Okay, there is another question. How effective, actually, there's more questions coming in. How effective would it be to boycott or pressure National England, National Trust, English Heritage? And which one feels most strategic to target?
It's a good question. The Stonehenge Alliance took 2 resolutions to National Trust AGMs, and this is not easily done. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to go through, and then you have to present it, and they say, you whatever it is, you've got a 250 words or something, and you have to present your case at the AGM, and members vote on it. We lost both of those motions. What we were asking for was for the National Trust to change or to review its stance of support for the road scheme. We lost both of those motions, even though we secured thousands and absolutely thousands of votes for our resolution. But unfortunately, like a lot of membership organizations where the AGM takes place, only a very small percentage, and I think in the case of the National Trust, I mean, don't quote me because I haven't got the figures in front of me, but it's really small, like 2% or something of their members actually vote, a very small number. But what a lot of people do is they give their votes to the chairman of the trust to vote on their behalf as he sees fit. So of course he's going to vote with the board, which supports the road scheme. So that's why we lost each time. We put a lot of time and effort into that. We've certainly written to English Heritage, who control, who manage the access to the stones. They manage the visitor centre. And incidentally, I didn't mention this, they've just this week received planning consent for additional buildings there. So even more stuff being built within the World Heritage Site. One of them is for an educational, like a classroom, a meeting room for schools and groups that are going there. And of course, one doesn't object to the principle of that, but it could have been built anywhere. It doesn't have to be built by the visitor centre. But sorry, your question was, I mean, these are monolithic organisations. They're very big. In the case of both of them, they're very big, but National Trust is enormous, has enormous bureaucracy wrapped around it. Whether you can appeal, whether you could get people to, members to take note, I don't know. But it's, it's another angle. And I'd have to say any additional angle is worth, exploring, frankly.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. So, okay, you don't have to comment on this, but I think I want to read that comment from Di. It is impossible to win any National Trust vote while the chairperson wields the proxy vote on top of all you said now. So, okay, then Jonathan said, or Jonathan, you can ask that question yourself. Is that
sure? You had mentioned about the preparatory works, and this is one of the things that I mean, there's additional bits to the question, I guess. I wondered if you had said that they had applied locally for permission to start preparatory works, and I wondered if there was information with that about where they're intending those preparatory works to be. And wondering to what extent the appeal process holds up the any of that preparatory work. Are they stopped from going in with bulldozers while this is still going through the legal process?
I think the undertaking that they've given us, Jonathan, through our legal team is that they will not start substantial, some Weasley words like substantial construction until the legal process has run its course. So the preparatory works, I mean, they've applied for this planning consent for Parsonage Down that I mentioned. That's already, that we expect that to be decided any day now by Wiltshire Council. And once they've got that, they'll presumably start the works. We will, in due course, put our objection up on our website, and people, if they're interested. I mean, I just think it's a very interesting, sounds hard to say, sort of an angle, really, because, we've been so focused on harm to the World Heritage Site and heritage. Suddenly, you've got them mucking about with a national nature reserve. And incidentally, just alongside, adjacent to the National Nature Reserve, is where they're going to dump all of the tunnel spoil. Everything that comes out from that tunnel boring machine will be dumped there. And I think I said in the last time I was speaking with you, that's going to be the equivalent of 2 Silbury Hills worth of material. So that's going to completely change those fields, because suddenly those fields are going to become higher. They're going to be covered in chalk. So the A360, this closure of that road, Jonathan, that's a pretty big deal locally, because it will cause traffic chaos. And, there are many local people, perhaps, who are not concerned with the World Heritage Site, but who are very uptight about that road being closed. They're talking about doing that from April, I think. So that will be going ahead. Now, you could say, I mean, I certainly say, well, why do they need to close the road? Why don't they lay the cables in the fields that run alongside the road? Because it's all a rural location, as you probably know, right the way down to Salisbury, in fact. National Highways say they couldn't get responses from some of the landowners. But I mean, it's beyond a joke, really, because they've had years to negotiate with landowners to sort that out. And here we are, if you like, at the 11th hour, and they're going to close the road. So those preliminary works are going ahead. Going ahead now.
Right, okay.
There are more questions around that subject, and maybe we should bring them in. So Louise says, why do you think the RSPP is supporting the engineering work? And do you think it would be an interesting strategy to pressure RSPP Wiltshire through calls, emailing their office, etc.?
Yeah, I do think that would be useful. And I mean, lots of people say, well, you know, why does the RSPB nationally support this scheme? And the answer is, I don't know. But I'm going to ask a Freedom of Information request to see whether RSPB have received any grants from National Highways. National Highways is a taxpayer-funded government agency. So we all pay for it, and they give our money away to organizations and to the National Trust, millions. And that's taxpayers' money. Now, people might laugh if you say, well, then the National Trust would support the road scheme. But I've no way of proving it. But it just doesn't seem ethical to me to be giving people huge grants when you're looking for their support. So I don't know why the RSPB support it. If you look at our objection to this planning application, you'll see that we've got an expert ecologist who says that this will be disastrous for the stone curlew. I mean, if there's only between 300, 400, 500 breeding pairs across the whole of the UK, this is a fragile, they're an amber listed bird. It's a fragile species. And yet no one, you know, I'm sorry to put it in such emotive terms, but no one seems to care really. It's just the stone curlew. And that's why I wanted to bring in the stone curlew, because it brings in a different angle, really.
Okay, I want to bring Di in. Di, you want to unmute. Di is active in the area, and she
oh yes,
put something there. So I would like to bring you in. Just say that, Di, rather than me reading it.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. I was one of the National Trust AGMs. I've been involved with National Trust for various things over the years. It's impossible to deal with because of the proxy vote, which is completely undemocratic, but that they don't seem to care about that. So I resigned from National Trust, and again, I heard nothing back from them about that. And I cited Stonehenge as my reason for resigning. I'm now on the point of resigning from the RSPB, but I'm not sure whether we're better off in or out. And I know through XR circles and things that the National Trust and Chris Packham will be leading a big march in London in June called Restore Nature Now. And it's slightly ironic that they're leading that if they're then quite happily trashing the stone curlew locally. And it is a bird of huge significance. And, you know, yeah, as you said, amber listed. Anywhere else, farmers and anything wouldn't be allowed to plough their land if there was a nest on it. No. So how they can actually dig a tunnel and completely, you can't open a field and put it somewhere else. It will just simply not breed. You are destroying it if you do that. Yeah. So I do think we should all be writing to the RSPB now and just complaining about them and saying, threatening to, you know, leave and whatever, because they're not doing their job. And Chris Packham is heavily involved with this march. He's heavily involved with the RSPB, and I think probably we should be copying him in as well, because this is a major travesty right on his doorstep. He lives in the New Forest. So that would be, yeah. Sorry, my thoughts on that particular subject.
Yeah, well, thank you, Di. That's really helpful. And thank you for the support you've given us over many years. It's enormously grateful to you. I mean, the stance that these organizations take is beyond belief, really. And lots of people say to me, well, why are they supporting it? Or why does the National Trust? And I cannot answer it. I just don't know why they support these things.
Yeah. Okay. I feel with that Chris Packham idea, there is something there, especially ethically speaking. That's right down his street, and he should actually be against it, shouldn't he? So okay, then Sonia asked, has everybody asked the Stone people? We have, Sonia, right at the beginning. Jonathan can maybe answer that very briefly, but it's a different subject, and we are very happy to work with you there. Jonathan, you want to talk very briefly about?
Yeah, just to keep it very brief, a big part of our early focus was through ceremonial and spiritual journeying work to connect with the landscape there. And yes, it is something that we kind of will want to kind of be doing again more regularly. So we will kind of look to kind of create more spaces for that. Definitely.
Yeah. So Sonia, you watch out for Sonia. Watch out for that, and also get in touch with us via email, and we can talk about that. The other thing, which was, would it be possible to have a link to that objection to the planning application that John mentioned? Have we got a link, John?
I haven't got one here, but we can get one, and I can give it to you, Krista, or to Jonathan, and perhaps we can pass it on. But we will post it on our website. And incidentally, all the motions, the resolutions that we took to the National Trust AGMs, plus, we blogged about it. And as Di says, the system just is undemocratic. But there's lots of stuff on our website about that as well. But the planning objection we can let you have.
Okay. And somebody said about occupying. Now, this is also slightly out of the remit of this evening, but before the Stonehenge Alliance won the case, they won a case that wasn't maybe clear, then the government appealed, and now they lost the appeal. And before the Stonehenge Alliance won the case, and we all thought it's all over, they have won, thanks goodness, these wonderful people have done it. Not thinking that the government would appeal and that Stonehenge Alliance would lose the appeal. There was a provisional camp at Stonehenge ready to occupy. And of course, that was, 3 years ago or so, Jonathan? Or something like that. So the idea was there, but at this moment in time, the legal process is still going. So hoping something like this is not necessary, and whether it would work is another question, or whether, like with HS2, it would just delay the process further, which is good, but not the ultimate objective. But yes, there was a movement about occupying the site and basically sitting in front of the bulldozers. That is just to answer that question. And again, when the time comes, it's worth a discussion, I would think. Okay, so
there was another question here just that I'm just holding open because it's an interesting one following on. This is from Kath, following on from the discussion about the curlews. Wondering how the new biodiversity net gain law affects the kind of, this idea of destroying a nature reserve. And had that come into effect in time, or would that apply, or has there been any mention of that in relation to this with the curlews?
I think there has, but I'm not an expert on this, Jonathan, so I'd need to defer to others to really answer that. But I mean, it's already carries, Parsonage Down is a site of special scientific interest. It's designated as a special area of conservation, and yet they can still go in there and scrape a piece of land off in order to make a nesting site. And I think whether it was you or Krista was alluding to this, but the idea, or maybe it was Di saying this, the idea that the stone curlews are going to pack up from where they currently breed and find their way some distance to this new breeding site seems to me to be pie in the sky, absolute fantasy. These are very sensitive birds. You know, they'll probably just clear off altogether, I would think.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think one of the things that struck me on hearing from outside the court of what the discussions were inside the court, and kind of hearing what the objections were to that and where things are now, and trying to find the kind of the rounded discussion, is just that yes, there's a whole load of reasons this is uh, why this is a terrible idea. It's not going to solve the problem with traffic. It's going to cost a huge amount of money. It's going to be devastating for the local environment and local rare species, um, and all of that. And what stands out for me is kind of is greater than that. That doesn't get a mention in the legal discussions because there isn't kind of any laws around it. Is the fact that this is regarded by many as a sacred landscape. And I do think there's kind of a whole lot of jumping through hoops to try and justify carving up a sacred landscape. And whatever people, whatever the word sacred might mean to different people, but this is a landscape that has been woven with our history, with generations, with thousands of years of people in this land, that's tied with old mythology. The stories that there have been kind of throughout the centuries of the the idea that these stones were brought over from Ireland, and all of that exciting kind of news recently when they found this connection specifically to this circle in Wales where it might have been. It's a place that has been a place of wonder for people for thousands of years, and I think we have done enough in this kind of current culture in terms of the scar that we're leaving on the environment and the planet from what we're doing. And it would be absolutely awful if, it's also happening in such a way to this sacred landscape. So yeah, it's really kind of important, kind of bringing it from all these different angles and just showing kind of all of the different harms that this scheme would be causing. I wonder if we might just kind of, if I could share the details, or if we could talk about the details about how people can support the campaign and support what you're doing there, John, whether that's financially, kind of through sharing and supporting. What I might do is just bring us back onto Spotlight for this.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Jonathan, can I also just say, if people can hear me, that if there are other questions that people have got, or if they want to contact us with suggestions or ideas, or they just want to make a link with us, then if you go to the Stonehenge Alliance website, you'll find our email address. And if you just use that email address, and that will come through to me, and I promise that we'll respond to you. So if there's anything, any burning questions that we haven't picked up through the chat, then just get hold of us, please. So some folks will know about the petition that we've had running for a number of years. And the petition currently is just short of 238,000 signatures. And those signatures come from 147 different countries, so right across the world, a lot from the UK. And in fact, on our website, there are two petitions, but we combine the totals, one for international people signing it internationally from outside of the UK, and one for people signing from within the UK. Now, we'd love to get that. As I say, it's nearly just very close to 238,000 signatures, which is a huge number. We'd love to get that up to 250,000, 250,000. That's only about another 13,000 signatures. So my plea would be, if you haven't signed, then please sign it. Send it to all your networks, all your contacts, just ask them to sign it. It takes 2 minutes, it costs nothing, and it adds a little bit more weight all the time. When we go to see UNESCO or any of these other people, we take the petition with us and show them the number of signatures. So please, please spread the word about that petition. Now, for the two legal challenges, and indeed for the appeal, we've had to raise money. And the Stonehenge Alliance and I am deeply humbled by people's huge generosity, all sorts of donations. from a quid to £1,000, you know, and in fact more in some cases. I imagine some people making those donations can barely afford it, but nevertheless, we've managed to pay the legal costs for the 2 High Court cases. To apply for permission to bring the appeal, we had to raise another 15,000, and we've already done that thanks to people's generosity. It's hugely humbling, and we're, as I say, enormously grateful. Now, if we're given permission to appeal, if we're given permission, and that's our best hope, then we'll need to raise about another 40,000. So that's when you would see us, as it were, crank up the fundraising effort again. And anything anyone can do to spread the word, to help chip in, if you can, then that would be enormously grateful. We'd be enormously grateful. Those 2 High Court cases, we had to raise just about 80,000, just a little bit more than 80,000 for each of those, principally to pay our lawyers, our legal team's fees. Those are heavily subsidized, those fees, because this is a prestigious case. And of course, if the legal team win, it adds to their CV, if you like, you know, in terms of their prestige. But nevertheless, so they charged us about 80,000. If they were to charge their full fee for each of those legal cases, it would be 350,000 for each case. They have to produce those figures for the High Court. So that's not a figure I've pulled out of the air. They've had to submit those figures. But as I say, from 350, they've done it for 80,000. So keep your eyes open. You'd see it on social media. You'll see it on our posts, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. If we're granted permission to appeal, then the fundraising machine will need to crank up again in order to raise the necessary funds.
So I have shared those links into the chat there, everybody. What I'd really be grateful for is if you could open those links and share one or other of them on social media. You've probably shared them all before, but just for another chance this evening for more people to see it. If you're in the UK based, the first petition there is the link that I've shared. I know there's people from around the world this evening who are joining in, and crucially, kind of the message about this hasn't kind of got to kind of many places around the world. We keep on hearing of people hearing about it for the first time. So that international petition link is the second one there. So please do, although it looks like the same link what I've just put in there. So let's click that one and open it up.
That will take you to the page, Jonathan. That link will take you to the page on our website. And on there, you'll find both petitions, international and UK.
Gotcha.
And when I last checked the total, to be precise, it was 237,849 signatures. Now I'm going to look at it tomorrow morning. Let's at least get it up to 238,000, please, guys. Please spread the word. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Get your auntie, shared the link. Get your granny, get your kids, get everyone to sign it.
The other link that I've shared there is to the crowdfunder, and as John has said, that hopefully this will go through. Kind of that the appeal, the application to appeal is accepted, and the kind of the crowdfunding will continue with that. One of the other things that we've been doing as Sacred Earth Activism is there's a t-shirt design that has been shared by Nick Hayes, and those have been used not only to raise funds, the proceeds are going to this fundraiser, but also it's a chance to share the message. I don't know if anybody else has got theirs on, but it does help, and people do ask questions, and people do kind of pop onto Google if they see you out and around watching it, and it helps kind of more subtly spread the message around. So I'll pop that message into the chat there, and some people have got some badges as well. Fantastic. So I think that link, the link doesn't, let me just fix that link on there. In terms of kind of as we mentioned, we've got people joining on this evening, kind of supporting from around the world. We have a message from some supporters from the other side of the world. They spoke recently at our online summit. They've been kind of longtime friends of Sacred Earth Activism. Viejo Rivas and Nina Caspi, who are shamanic teachers, elders, ceremonialists from the Peruvian Amazon, who have recorded a short message to share with us this evening. And I'll just put that on play now, if that's all right. And we'll just hear what they have to say about the importance of their message of solidarity with Stonehenge and the importance of protecting our sacred sites. Okay, so hopefully that's visible now. If somebody could give me a wave just to confirm. Yeah, I see a nod there. Fantastic.
Yeah, all good, all good, all good.
Hello from the Amazon. Although we're very far away from Stonehenge, sacred places are really significant everywhere. And we're going to give Viejo and Nina a moment to speak about their thoughts on the desecration that is proposed to take place in this very, very important World Heritage Site. So, Viejo, you have a few words for John Adams and the people who are trying to lead this campaign against the development.
Si tienes algunas palabras para John Adams y el equipo que está detrás de que se pare ese desacramiento de este lugar sagrado.
Creo que nosotros estamos en un poder de poder ayudar a las energías ancestrales que nos protegen.
He thinks that we are in a space where we actually can help to the energies of the sacred
Son
places.
lugares de puntos de equilibrio del mundo
These are spaces of balance
donde regulan las vibraciones de la tierra
where the vibrations of the earth are regulated
para armonizar todo lo que es la naturaleza,
To
los ríos,
harmonize
las aguas
everything which is the earth, the rivers, the waters.
y profanar estos sitios energéticos es malograr el mundo también en su parte vibrativa.
And to profane those sacred places is actually a bad thing for the earth itself.
Son puntos que realmente son sagrados y se denominan sagrados por la sabiduría ancestral.
These places are actually sacred, and if you destroy that, you destroy the earth and its sacredness.
Donde esos puntos energéticos dan la vida a la tierra.
Those energetic points are actually giving
En
birth
con-
to
en
work,
conexión
to life
con el
itself,
universo.
in the connection with the universe.
Entonces tenemos que conservar esas energías, ¿ya? Y yo estoy de acuerdo en proteger también ese lugar.
So we have to protect or to preserve those energies of the world, and he is as well for the protection of these
Porque nosotros los curanderos tenemos también el contacto espiritual
because the curanderos have as well the spiritual connection
y el contacto de los espíritus de las montañas, de las selvas, de los ríos y todo lo que nos pertenece de la tierra.
and as well they are in connection with all with the spirits of the mountains, the rivers, the earth itself, the waters.
El hombre no puede destruir esto por motivos de agrandar más las ciudades.
Human cannot destroy those sacred places just because of making a city huger or more infrastructure.
Profanar estos lugares sagrados trae demasiada consecuencia al ser humano.
Profaning these sacred spaces is just making the humans worse.
Muchísima atención.
Lots of attention.
Esto no puede ser profanado.
This shall not be profaned.
Respetemos los puntos energéticos sagrados de nuestro mundo
We shall respect the energetic points in the world,
y unamos fuerzas para protegerlo más.
and maybe unite even more strength to protect it even more.
Nina, do you have a few words to share?
¿Tienes algunas palabras para compartir?
Sí, bueno, sumando a lo que habla Viejo y todos nosotros con una gran intención
Adding to the words just Viejo shared and all our intentions
de proteger estos espacios sagrados que hay en el planeta Tierra,
to protect these sacred places they are on earth,
entendiendo que son portales de energía muy importantes para nuestra vida aquí en el planeta.
Understanding that these spaces and places are actually portals of energy which are important for the earth.
No es la primera vez que esto pasa
It's not the first time that this happens,
y nosotros como humanidad
and we as humanity,
necesitamos aunar fuerzas
we need to unite strength
desde lo que es esa conciencia espiritual
from the spiritual consciousness
y también desde nuestra voz para impedir que estas cosas sigan avanzando.
and as well from our voices to not let these things go forward.
Lo que parece algo momentáneo y sin importancia para algunos
What may be something momentaneous for someone
puede traer grandes consecuencias el día de mañana para nuestro futuro, para la humanidad,
can have lots of consequences for
para este planeta,
for the humanity and for the planet tomorrow,
para los animales,
for the animals,
para el mundo vegetal,
for the vegetable
el mundo
world
natural.
and the natural world.
Entonces, si amamos nuestra vida,
If we love our lives,
necesitamos ser conscientes también de lo que nos sostiene en esta tierra.
we have to be conscious about as well those things, what gives life to us.
Estos lugares en el planeta Tierra
Those places on earth,
no están por casualidad,
they're not there because of casuality.
son lugares sagrados
These are sacred places
que tienen una historia y una sabiduría
which have history and wisdom
puesta por nuestros ancestros,
because of our ancestors,
precisamente para el futuro de la humanidad.
precisely for the future of the humanity.
Thank you, Nina. The people of Peru, in particular, are very sensitive about this type of thing. There are roads that cross some of the designs in the Nazca Desert. Machu Picchu is almost unrecognizable from what it looked like 50 years ago, even 30 years ago. The only reason that we can see that these things happen is from greed. We can speak from the heart, and I thank Viejo and Nina from speaking from theirs, about the importance to all humanity of all these sacred sites. There is no way to recreate them. We all share the same ancestors. If we go far enough back, we're all related. And this particular monument belongs to everyone. A road only serves to enrich those who are involved in the construction of the road. It will require thousands and thousands of cubic yards of earth to be disturbed that hold bones and artifacts. There is just no defense for moving forward with this. We thank you for your attention to your relations in South America, and please stand with John Adams and all of those who are working to stop the tunnel. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for organizing that. It's deeply moving and humbling to make that connection, to see those beautiful people wearing the t-shirts saying save Stonehenge and their words. So thank you very much for that. It's yeah, humbling, as I say, and we're enormously grateful.
So from right around the world, there's support for the protection of Stonehenge. We're incredibly grateful for you for joining us this evening, for giving this time. We can, everybody can appreciate with the process, the legal process that's going on, how incredibly busy you all are. So we're really grateful that you've given this time this evening to update us on everything that's going on, but also for your tireless dedication to the protection of this sacred landscape.
Jonathan, can I just say thank you to you and to Krista and to Sacred Earth Activism for the invitation and for standing up for Stonehenge. We don't have this kind of platform ourselves, so it's so useful to have this this link, this fellowship with you guys, and for us to stand together for all the reasons that our brothers and sisters from Peru just explained. So thank you for that. We're very, very grateful. And to everyone who's been listening, if there is any aspect of the campaign you want to know about, don't hesitate to get hold of us. We all share the same objective, which is to stop the road from being built. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Shall we go back to gallery for a moment?
Yep. Did you want to say something, Krista?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, please, if you haven't been heard this evening, or if you have more questions, or if you want to join, we do quite a lot of different work. Please email us. We will answer you, and it's info@Sacred Earth Activism. And I also .org. And I also wanted to thank everybody who joined tonight, and I think I'm speaking in the name of Jonathan here as well. It's no good having an organization if people don't join in. So thank you ever so much for that, and of course to John, but Jonathan has done it already. Okay, that's me done.
Super. And so as we close this evening, well, go for it, John.
No, I beg your pardon. I was just going to say, and we kept to time pretty much. So,
absolutely. So as we close this evening, as we go away from this space, may we remember and honor that connection that we have, that heartfelt connection that we have to that sacred landscape. The sacred landscape that reaches back through time, back to that place of the time of the ancestors. And let's remember that connection that we have to all of those that have loved that sacred landscape, that have walked in that sacred landscape, that have built that sacred landscape, that have talked about and been inspired by and marveled at that sacred landscape throughout the centuries. To all those now who right across the world, from here all the way to Peru and even further and background again, join us in this support for this campaign to protect the sacred landscape, so that it may be protected for all the other than human that call it their home, and to all those future generations, that they may have the space protected, so that they may be able to gather there, that they may be able to be inspired, be able to marvel at it, and be filled with awe with this sacred landscape, just as we are now. Thank you all. Blessed be.
Good night, everybody.
good night, guys. Thank
Good
you.
night, guys. Unmute. Good night. Give us a shout. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.